So when it comes to the timeline for this case, we were originally told that the children had been at school on Tuesday, there was an in-service day Wednesday, and then they didn't go to school on Thursday because Lily had a cough. Originally, that's all we knew. So of course people who followed other cases in the past, people who've been around the block a few times, had to question, well, when was the last time that Lily and Jack were seen by someone other than family? How could we rule out the possibility that they went missing prior to the Friday morning? Then, of course, we had the RCMP and Daniel both tell us about footage of the entire family who were out on an excursion on the Thursday before the children went missing. Originally, we were just told that the children were seen that Thursday in town, but then one of the newspapers clarified it with the RCMP and found out that yes, they were also caught on CCTV. So that gave us a smaller time frame. We knew they were seen Thursday, and from what we were hearing, they got home Thursday afternoon, which narrowed it down to sometime after Thursday afternoon that they went missing. And then, of course, Daniel's mother, Janie, came forward, and she had that little bit of crucial information that supposedly narrows down the timeline and proves that it was actually Friday morning that the children went missing and that Daniel was telling the truth. So before Janie came forward, all we had was Malaya saying, well, the last time she saw them was Thursday night when she put them to bed. Daniel saying, well, I heard them and I saw them on Friday morning. Lily popped her head into the room a few times. I didn't see Jack though. But then, of course, Janie comes to the rescue and she heard them playing outside her RV. Naturally, we're expected to ignore the fact that she is the mother of one of two people who can't get their stories straight and who seem to be number one suspects in this case. Instead, we're meant to just believe. Janie heard them Friday morning. That rules out any further speculation. There couldn't possibly have been an occurrence earlier than that because we now have Janie's word to back up Daniel's story. Of course, it's extremely convenient that she happened to be there rather than heading into town with her brother. Because she was supposed to go into town with her brother, wasn't she? But apparently she decided to go back to bed instead. So while we can't get a straight answer as to whether or not Justin was there on that Friday morning, we do know that there were three people there Friday morning who shouldn't have been there. Janie, allegedly Lily, and allegedly Jack. I'm going to say allegedly because I'm not convinced. So let's have a look at this.
My brother, Ron, called me at 8:48 and asked me if I wanted to go to town with him. And I said no. I said, I'm staying home. I said, I'm going back to bed. Okay, I went and I laid down. Next thing you know, my dog started barking and the kids were out in the yard.
So she hasn't given us an exact time frame in terms of how long it was between when she went to lay down and when she heard the kids out in the yard. But basically, based on what she's saying here, one of two things could have occurred had she decided to go to town with her brother. One, she may not have been aware at all that the children were out in the yard, or two, she may have seen them out in the yard if she was heading out of her RV to hop in her brother's car or wait for her brother. So conveniently for Daniel, she just happened to be in the right place at the right time because she changed her plans. I'm going to come back to this and dig into it a little bit more shortly.
From my understanding, Malaya probably didn't know I was home because I usually go Fridays with my brother.
So this wasn't a one-off thing, her brother ringing her, do you want to come to town with me today? What she's telling us here is that she usually goes to town with her brother on Fridays. When someone says usually, that is them essentially telling you this is normally what occurs. Usual. This is the usual thing for me. As in, this occurs every week. Or, for the most part, every week. Because she's saying usually means that maybe there are the occasional weeks that she doesn't go. But it is her normal pattern. I would imagine that the weeks that she wouldn't go would be maybe because she has other things planned. Not simply a case of, I don't feel like it today. And I'll come back to that later too.
I never left the property all the time those kids were missing. And after this search, I still don't leave the property. I may go to town maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks. I stay here and tell reporters to get off my property because I don't want to talk to them. And I'm a homebody. I'm like a hermit. I don't go anywhere. And I was that way before this all started, before the disappearance of Jack and Lily started, and I'm still a hermit.
So from what she's saying here, it sounds like her outings with her brother to town are pretty much the only times that she leaves her property. She is a self-confessed hermit. Now, I'm going to speculate that where she's saying that, since this happened, I'm more of a hermit. I'm going to speculate that before all this happened, since she said she would usually go to town with her brother, my speculation is that perhaps she is going less now because of this case. Hence the reason why she says sometimes once a fortnight. Because we had that clip in this CBC interview, and I won't play it because you've all seen it. But in the CBC interview, she specifically says that she pretty much hides out at the back of the house. She tries to stay out of sight of the road. If she has to go within sight of the road, she keeps her head down. So that to me suggests that that is the reason why she's saying maybe once a fortnight, as opposed to she was saying that, her routine was that she would usually go to town with her brother. So I'm speculating here that she's going out from the property much less than what she was before the children went missing.
If anyone has a dog, when they go through experience like my dog has, when there's nobody around, and then all of a sudden everybody have all these people come into your yard, and your dog is just like, wow. Like, it's just like putting someone that has been isolated from people for a long time and putting them in a crowd. It's just like they're just overwhelmed with all this here emotion, like they don't know how to control themselves.
So for those of you who may not have recognised what it was that Janie was saying here, the stuff about her dog, not so relevant. The stuff towards the end of it, the comparison about her dog being overwhelmed because of all the people on the property, and then her saying, if you someone who's not used to going somewhere where there's a lot of people, that you can become overwhelmed and struggle with your emotions. What she has described here is extreme social anxiety, and this fits in with everything else she's telling us. People who struggle with social anxiety will quite often stay at home as much as possible and only venture out when they really, really have to. And if they go somewhere where there's a crowd, then they find themselves panicking. They do find themselves unable to control their emotions, unable to regulate their emotions. So for people like that, they may find themselves suddenly faced with this overwhelming anxiety where they just have to get away from all the people. Or they may go the other way and their anxiety may come out as frustration and anger, so that if someone bumps into them, just for example, because they are so overwhelmed with anxiety, then they are more likely, if they are someone who is prone to anger, they are more likely to become angry and in a somewhat irrational way and snap at someone for bumping them. Now, based on A, her personality, but B, the things that she has said about Belinda and Malaya, I am quite confident in saying that Janie is not someone with a deep understanding of human psychology. So, to me, her giving this somewhat accurate description of what someone feels like when they're suffering from social anxiety in a crowded situation says to me that the reason she chooses to be a hermit, the reason she rarely ventures from her property, the reason she likes to hide out around the back of her property, and if she's within sight of the road puts her head down, is because she does suffer from extreme social anxiety. So why is this significant, you ask? There's a few things. First of all, given the way she's describing it, I would say that Janie has quite extreme levels of social anxiety, which to me would suggest that she's not going to head off into town on her own. So these trips to town with her brother are probably definitely the only times that she's likely to go into town. She's not likely to go, okay, well, I didn't go to town with my brother on Friday, so I'll just slip into town on my own on Wednesday instead. Now, the other thing that goes with this sort of social anxiety is mental exhaustion. So, for someone who is like planning a trip into town, they have to prepare themselves mentally beforehand. And then they have that whole experience of being around people, which is mentally exhausting. It is physically exhausting for someone who struggles with social anxiety. So when it comes to something like this that is a usual thing that you do, you spend so much time preparing yourself for it that you tend to not put it off. You tend to not want to just go, okay, well, I'll spontaneously do it another time. It's something that you prepare yourself for so much that it has to be part of your routine. And being part of your routine is important because it does require that mental preparation. So where I'm coming at from here is that if Janie is saying that she usually goes into town on a Friday, then it's a hell of a coincidence that this one particular Friday, she was just happy to just go, no, I'm just going to go back to bed. Of course, there's always the exception. If you struggle with social anxiety and you have something like this where you have to prepare yourself mentally beforehand, if there are other things that are a bit of a emotional mental blow prior to that, then it just might completely take the wind out of your sails and you find that you haven't managed to do your usual mental preparation because your mind's elsewhere. So suddenly you can't cope with the thought of going to a place where there's all these people. So did something happen prior to that Friday morning that made Janie feel that she couldn't cope with the anxiety of going into town? Or was there something else that took priority? Maybe she really did need to go back to sleep and have a bit of a nap. Maybe for some reason this one morning, out of every other Friday morning, she was just too exhausted and maybe hadn't had enough sleep for some reason. I do feel it is interesting and significant that someone for whom it is their normal routine to go into town on a Friday just happens to choose not to do so on the Friday when these children allegedly go missing. And now let's talk about Jack and Lily. So we were told that they didn't go to school the day before because Lily had a cough. But we also know the family went into town. Now, it's not uncommon for families who are not well off financially, who are perhaps lower socio-economic status, to basically decide, well, okay, we need to head into town, maybe we need new shoes for this child, so we're just going to pull them all out of school for the day. We'll just say they're sick and we'll take them all into town. It's just going to make life so much easier than trying to send them to school. Of course, we've also heard that Daniel claimed that Lily had a black eye, courtesy of a Tonka truck, the day that the children went missing. So it's quite possible that the reason they didn't go to school was because of bruises. Particularly given that Children's Protective Services were already keeping an eye on these children. I'm going to presume that Canadian teachers, like Australian and American teachers, are mandatory reporters, meaning that if Lily had turned up to school with a black eye, they would have had to have contacted CPS and say, this child has come to school with a black eye. This is the story we've been told, but legally we still have to report it, in which case CPS would then have to do a welfare check. They'd have to look into it. And if Jack had also presented with bruises at the same time, then that could have been significant. But let's go with the story that they kept them home because Lily had a cough. Maybe it was just easier to keep both of them home because of the cough. I can imagine Thursday, if they were planning on going in town and they knew they weren't going to be home before Jack got back on the bus, then it would have been easier to take him with them. And if they were keeping Lily home on the Friday because she had a cough and they'd already kept Jack home the day before, why not just keep him home? Here's the problem I have with that story. Malaya made it pretty clear that the last time she actually saw the children was Thursday night when she allegedly put them to bed. So she gets up Friday morning, super early, goes out onto the driveway, marks them as absent from school, doesn't go in and check on the children at any point in time. Not even before marking them absent. She doesn't go in and see how Lily's doing and see if Lily's feeling better. But she goes out, she marks them absent, and she goes back to bed with allegedly a sick child. Why doesn't that seem real? No mother that I know is going to get up out of bed, contact the school to say their child's not going, without checking their child, and then go back to bed without checking their child, if their child genuinely is unwell. In fact, the majority of mothers that I know, if they had a 6-year-old daughter who was unwell, that 6-year-old daughter would probably be sleeping in their bed with them. So, conveniently, you have Janie, who usually goes to town on a Friday, but this Friday decided she wasn't going to town, which meant that she just happened to be there and hear the children playing outside, which of course backs up Malaya and Daniel's story. You have Lily and Jack, who should have been at school, but weren't because apparently Lily was unwell. But Malaya actually never bothered to check on her that Friday morning to see how she was. I don't think I've ever heard of anyone contacting the school and telling them their child is unwell when they haven't actually seen their child that morning, when they haven't even set foot in that child's room to see if they're feeling better or worse. She says she heard them playing after she'd gone back to bed. Wouldn't you call your daughter in and ask her how she was feeling? Apparently Malaya wouldn't. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because I only just did a quick Google search, but I gather that Nova Scotia is like Australia in that if you need a doctor's appointment, then you're going to have to try and get one a few days ahead, or you're going to have to ring the doctor's surgery first thing in the morning and hope that they have a cancellation and they can get you in. But here's the thing. According to Malaya, depending on which part of the story you listen to, she discovered the children were missing either at 20 to 10 or right on 10 o'clock. Because on one hand, you get this story of them searching for about 20 minutes and then calling 911, and you also get the version of her immediately calling 911. So that means that she went to bed till at least 9:40, allegedly. No concern about her daughter's welfare, her daughter who allegedly had a cough and couldn't go to school the day before. She's not checked on her at any point in the morning to see if she is feeling any better or any worse. She's not checked to make sure that she hasn't got a hellish temperature that might need urgent care. She's not concerned about the possibility of maybe needing to get her a doctor's appointment that day. Maybe needing to check her before whatever time reception opens for your local doctor's clinic, so that you can be the first person on the phone when the clinic opens to say, look, I've got a sick child, can you fit me in? Malaya is the daughter of a nurse. So you would think that she would actually have some concept of responsible parenting when it comes to medical issues. So why, if Lily had this cough the day before and she had then got up that morning, called into the school and said, Lily's not coming to school today because she's still got a cough, why didn't she check on her at any point during that morning? Why didn't she check on her prior to when any local doctor's surgeries might have been just opening? Because I would imagine if it's anything like Australia, if you decide to ring a doctor's surgery at 20 to 10 when you finally crawl out of bed, then no, you're not going to get an appointment that day. Because any last minute, any cancellations will have already been filled. So we have Janie cancelling her trip to town, her usual trip to town. We have the children staying home, even though Malaya never checked first to see if Lily was feeling any better. You have Malaya not worrying about getting up to check on Lily, who's apparently been ill. Not even worrying about getting up early enough to check on her to make sure that she hasn't gotten worse and to make sure that she doesn't need to get a doctor's appointment. And they want us to believe that those children actually did go missing on the Friday morning. Things just don't add up here, folks. So on that note, I'm going to finish off here. Thank you for listening. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe. Also, please hit that like button because YouTube loves that. That gets these videos out into the algorithm. And also, please leave a comment below. Thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.